One defense allowed 198 points in an entire 16-game season. Some units give up that many points in half that time today, and the man anchoring the middle of it was told by scouts that he was too small to ever start in the NFL. Before we go further, there is something Dick Butkus, the man who defined what a Chicago middle linebacker was supposed to be, effectively admitted about the player you are about to meet. We are not telling you yet. First, you need to see exactly what the system said was impossible for him. In 1981, NFL scouts had a clear picture of what a starting middle linebacker needed to be: 6'2" or taller, long arms to shed blockers, a frame built to survive over a decade in the running lanes. Mike Singletary measured 6 feet tall and weighed 230 pounds, and scouts wrote the same word next to his name over and over: small. 37 players were selected before him in the 1981 NFL Draft. Not one team called his name in the first round. The system had already decided what a great middle linebacker looked like. Mike Singletary did not look like that. Singletary grew up in Houston, Texas, the youngest of 10 children, in a house where his father, a minister, would not allow him to play sports. He found football almost by accident, in the confusion after his father left the family, and by high school he was already breaking helmets with the force of his hits. At Baylor University, he was named Southwest Conference Player of the Year twice, and yet on the day of the 1981 NFL Draft, he sat and watched the entire first round go by without his name being called. He walked outside his own house. He was crying. He has said so himself, years later, in his own words. He stood outside, frustrated, questioning whether he even wanted to keep playing a game that had just told him in front of everyone that he was not good enough. Then he prayed. He asked to be drafted by one team specifically, the Chicago Bears, the franchise built on hard-hitting defense since the days of Dick Butkus. 5 seconds later, his girlfriend, the woman who is still his wife today, opened the door and told him Chicago had just picked him, in the second round. Pick number 38. You need to sit with that for a second. A player who would go on to become the heart of the greatest defense many people have ever watched was, minutes earlier, standing outside his own house wondering if football was even worth it anymore. For decades before Singletary arrived, Dick Butkus was the answer whenever anyone in Chicago argued about the best middle linebacker the Bears or the NFL had ever produced. Nobody in football says this directly, but by the time the 1985 season ended, that conversation had quietly changed. The debate was no longer just about Butkus. It was about which of the two Bears legends belonged on top, and that argument still has not fully settled. Here is the number: 198 points. That is every point the entire Chicago Bears defense allowed across 16 regular season games in 1985, the lowest total in the league. 198 points, while the Bears offense was scoring at will behind Walter Payton and Jim McMahon. 198 points, at a time when the best offenses in football were built to score 3 times that many across a season. Then the postseason arrived and the defense somehow got tighter. Chicago shut out the New York Giants 21-0, then shut out the Los Angeles Rams 24-0, the first team in NFL history to post back-to-back shutouts in the playoffs. On January 26th, in the Louisiana Superdome, they held the New England Patriots to 7 rushing yards on 11 carries and won 46-10. Across 3 playoff games, this defense allowed a total of 10 points, 198 points in the regular season. Almost nobody in the modern NFL believes that number can ever be matched again. Years later, Singletary looked back at being passed over in the first round and said this: "It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I came into pro football with a chip on my shoulder. That chip built one of the greatest defenses in football history. The next real chance for any defense to challenge that 1985 standard comes when Super Bowl 61 is played in February of 2020. 7. Watch closely when it happens, because every dominant defense from now on gets measured against a number set decades ago by a player scouts once called too small. So tell us in the comments. With today's rules protecting offenses at every level, could a defense ever allow 198 points again, or is that record locked away for good?